What's going on, everyone? It's Simon, and today we're talking about this little guy and why I switched from the FS5 to the Sony FX6. If you've been following the channel for any length of time, you know that the Sony FS5 is one of my favorite cameras of all time. I did a video right here of why the Sony FS5 is my workhorse camera. With that, I decided to make a big jump recently that I was unsure of, but it had to happen. I'm one of those people who I like the new tech, but I'm also a fan of using the gear you have because it's capable. And the FS5 is an incredibly powerful camera. In fact, I recently sold it to a buddy who's going to be using it for years to come. That being said, the FX6 checked enough boxes for me to warrant making that step up from the FS5 to the FX6 and making that investment. Now, what might those things be? Well, the biggest ones were the jump from the crop sensor to the full frame sensor, and the reason for that is the low light capabilities of this. Since it shares a lot of the same technology as the A7S III and the FX3, the low light capabilities of this will far exceed what the FS5 could do, which was always one of the struggles that I had with it, and one of the reasons why I was actually thinking about dropping down to just a mirrorless kit where I could use all full frame. Then on top of that, the built-in variable ND. One of the craziest things that I have been doing testing with is the auto variable ND, which is mind-blowingly accurate and fantastic at the exact same time. And that is one of the big reasons why I wanted to go to an FX6 if I was making an upgrade over an A7S III or an FX3. The built-in ND is one of those things that even with the FS5, I used it all the time when I was shooting documentary stuff. The ability to just quickly adjust while recording without having any issue saved me so many times. And now to be able to actually use auto variable ND and shoot with one less thing to think about in certain situations, granted I'm not going to use it all the time, yeah, huge. Another thing is the way improved autofocus. They have vastly improved what it's capable, the much more ability to fine tune your autofocus location, and eye autofocus is built into this now. The eye autofocus is amazing. So yeah, those are like some of the big things. One of the other big things that I didn't realize was going to be a big deal is actually the added quarter 20 spots on the top handle, along with the added buttons on the top handle, which I kind of knew the buttons were going to be a big deal, but the screws. So I'm doing an upcoming video about how I rig my camera for use in run and gun situations that involves this little Peak Design anchor on the top handle. And this gives me the ability to do a lot more balance adjustment depending on my lenses for when I'm out in the field. That is a huge thing for me that was always a frustration with the FS5 that didn't have the options for different quarter 20 holes. One of the things that Sony always does that bugs me is I really hate their microphone mount. And so I always basically just take it off and use a Rycote mount that I rig in somehow. I currently have it set up with a little articulating arm up front, and voila. One of the big changes I had to make going from the FS5 to the FX6 is I actually had to get a smaller microphone. Going from the crop sensor to the full frame sensor, the Rode NTG4 Plus that I've been using for the last 4 or 5 years would show up in frame at wider angles where, like, I'm using my 16 to 35 at 16. The front of the wind cover would show up in my shot, which is frustrating and annoying. However, I was able to get this little Audio-Technica microphone that's only about 7.5 inches long to 8 inches long, which is like 4 or 5 inches shorter than the NTG4 Plus. One of the things I'm losing is the ability to have battery built in, so I'm having to phantom power from the camera, but that's not a big deal to me because of the fact that I have this camera and the ability to power through the XLR port. Then I also have the Sony wireless lav system, which I use the hot shoe, or the multi-channel interface shoe as Sony calls it, and that is a game changer for me because the way that the Sony FX6 works is I actually have the ability to have 4 channels of audio. So what I do, and the way that I have it set up for my early testing, is I use channels 3 and 4 through the multi-channel shoe, and I'm able to set one at my normal record level and one as a safety that's a little bit lower. And I do the same with my microphone with channels 1 and 2. And the reason for that is that way I always have a safety for plosives or loud noises that might show up. I've only been doing an early testing, and so far it's been great, so I'm super stoked about that. If you notice, this whole thing is like super compact, and I actually think it's a little smaller than my FS5, which is pretty stinking serious. One of the other things that they did add that they didn't have on the FS5 is this plastic sunshade. It's definitely bulkier now with it, but in all honesty, I used to have to like make custom gaff tape things around, which was really annoying. So I am actually really happy with this upgrade. I'm not sure how I feel about the latch mechanism, but overall, I have to say it's a pretty solid little addition, one that I am super happy to be using. That's really the big things about this camera that made me make the jump from the FX, or the FS5, I should say. Yeah, I mean, why would I jump from an FX something to an FX something when, yeah. But anyways, I'm still doing a lot of testing on this. I'm shooting a project right now that's really helping me test all the settings on this. I can't wait to share more about that. And so with that, I'm actually doing a bunch of BTS, so that way I have the ability to show you guys like what's going on with it, what I like about this camera, what I don't like about this camera. So if you guys have questions about the FX6, leave a comment down below because I'm going to be answering them in upcoming videos about the Sony camera. Ta-da! And hopefully soon doing some testing with the A7S III and some other things like that in the coming months, but that is not happening quite yet. So for now, leave any specific FX6 questions down below. Make sure you're subscribed so that way you see when I do a video about it later. And other than that, have a great week. See you guys next time.